Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Let's drop the Monday night is rolling in. Let the baseball season begin. From the farm system down to the street. Single A, double A, feeling the heat. NCAA, softball and baseball, the diamond swing. Hear that Louisville slugger sing. Welcome to the Bullpen Bulletin, where the hardball magic is beginning. Mike, Patt, and Freddie B take the stand, the loudest baseball show in the land. Sports Radio, heavy and real. That's just how we feel. That's just how we feel. From the month of March to the autumn breeze, bringing you games that are bound to please. We cover the pros and we cover the kids, every single play, everything they did. From the minor leagues up to the major show, we got the stories you gotta know. Through the rain, through the dirt, through the pain, hear the roar of the stadium train. You can't script October. No, you can't script October. The Bullpen Bulletin. The Bullpen Bulletin. The Bullpen Bulletin. The Bullpen Bulletin. Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is baseball. Mike, Pat, Freddie B.
And good evening, baseball fans, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Tons of baseball to get to, playoff races heating up, amazing appearances and first games for players across the league, and even the sale of one team has been approved. We're going to get to all of that. But first, of course, I must introduce my co-host. Now, it is not Freddie B, as it has been so far this season. He has to not be here this evening. So I have a different co-host, a guest co-host, as you will. Somebody who, if you're a fan of IE Sports Radio, you've certainly seen his beautiful face around, especially if you're a hockey fan of IE Sports Radio. It is Adam Karnik joining us tonight. Good evening, sir. How are you doing?
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me. Happy to pinch hit here on an August evening. Let's talk some baseball.
Let's talk some baseball, and I'm gonna give you a second applause button for the statement there. That was beautiful. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. So, of course, it's Monday night, so not a ton of, actually a decent lineup of games tonight here. We're going to jump into our current score update before we get to the headlines. We actually just had a game go final. Orioles and Rays in Tampa. Rays won this one 7-6, avoided a 4-game sweep. Words I did not think I'd be saying today. Of the Orioles, and the Orioles were pretty darn close. It took a really strong 7th inning for the Rays to get there, but they did pull that one out. So the Rays win 7-6 there. We also had Cardinals and Reds, game one of a doubleheader, makeup from May 24th. We're going back 3 months on that one. Cardinals win game one 2-1, and I believe game two is underway. Top of the ninth, Cardinals are leading the Reds 5-4 there. We have the Marlins are in Philadelphia taking on the Phillies, currently 4-3 Philadelphia. That one just entering the bottom of the seventh. We've got the Tigers leading the Pirates 5-1. That one in the top of the sixth. We got the Red Sox beating up on the Diamondbacks 7-1. That one in the middle of the sixth. Mets are leading the Padres 2-1. That one in the top of the eighth. The Royals are beating the Athletics 6-1. The Twins put it up an early 4 spot against the Braves, winning that one 4-0 in the top of the second. We've got a Chicago matchup going tonight for you, Adam. For those of you who don't know, Adam, our resident Chicago sports fan, and the White Sox are actually beating the Cubs 3-2. That one entering into the bottom of the fourth. And we've got the Dodgers leading the Rockies 1-0. That one entering the bottom of the second. No true West Coast games. So that is your whole lineup for the evening. Adam, any of those results kind of standing out to you so far?
Well, for the Cubs White Sox, I'm not surprised Shota Imanaga giving up another home run, and with people on board. Always the conundrum for the Cubs fans with a show to start. It's not will he give up home runs, it's how many people will be on board when he does.
Gotcha. So
Tigers beating up on the Pirates surprises me. Tigers on the Pirates doing well, keeping that train moving.
Yep, and actually, it looks like the Tigers just added another one to make it 6-1. So yeah, they're doing pretty good there. Detroit over Pittsburgh. So Adam, I got to ask the question then on Imanaga. So is it almost you feel safe when there's no one on base? Like, does he not give them up when the bases are empty?
Oh no! That is the joy of a Shota Imanaga start. You are going to see home runs. You're going to see multiple home runs. You just hope that when he gives up 3, that he also only gives up 3 runs.
Okay. Gotcha. And it's home run or bust. There's nothing in between.
He has that splitter that he has. It's still really good. He can get really good dive on it. He can strike out. This day and age, every starting pitcher can work the strikeouts. It's just when Shota goes bad, he goes really bad. The old, now this phrase would get used more with a slider than with a splitter. But remember the old cement mixers that guys would throw? It's the grip of a slider, the rotation of a slider, but it just doesn't move anywhere. That's kind of what his splitter does, is it just hovers right there and kabam. Indeed.
Yeah, and if you give a hitter a meatball, most hitters these days will take that about 450 feet. Kobe Mayo of the Orioles earlier, fun fact, 468-foot bomb in the Trop today. Thing hit the back wall in left field. I was like, my goodness.
Think about how hard you have to hit a baseball to have it go 468 feet. That is some gun power there.
Right. Indoors at sea level too. Like, not a lot of good beneficial environmental factors for you there. And he's still out there launching them. So we're going to get to our headlines, and then we'll get into our review for this past week. First headline, little bit of a sad one, unfortunately. We have the passing of former MLB pitcher Tommy John. Yes, the Tommy John. I'm sure most fans out there are familiar with the term Tommy John surgery. It is named for the player who had the first really successful one back in the 70s. I'm trying to remember the exact year that he got the surgery, but it was in the 70s. And then what made it more impressive was the subsequent 14 years afterwards that he pitched. He actually won more games after having the surgery than he did before. But Adam, go ahead with your thoughts on this one and any other fun things to know about Tommy John. Of course, everybody knows him for the surgery, but it's actually a pretty impressive MLB career.
Yeah, the thing that always stood out to me with Tommy John was, all right, he had the surgery in late September of 74, and all right, he's going to miss a couple of years. At the time, that injury was, that's it. That's the end of your career. So he decides to undergo what was the very, very radical and experimental treatment at the time, where it's, my sister's a nurse, so I get into some of the medical nitty gritty a little bit. They take the vein in your arm, the ligament, and they flip it around. And the ingenuity for somebody to, well, what if we tried this? Oh, hey, look, it still works. It still functions. He pitched 14 more years after that. That's unheard of, because it wasn't like he was a spring chicken at the time when he had the surgery. He was in his late 20s. So it was, all right, this could very well be it. I one of my favorite parts from the story was he has the procedure, it winds up being a success, and then the doctor that performed the surgery kept saying, the way Tommy John became shorthand was, it was a lot easier for players to say, well, I want the surgery that Tommy John had, rather than to say, I want the ulnar ligament repair surgery. It's just,
right.
Give me what Tommy John had. Just do that one for me. And it just became the shorthand. That was always kind of cute and fun to me.
Yes. Saying Tommy John surgery is a lot easier than saying, and I've got it right here, ulnar collateral ligament reconstruction.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
that just rolls off the tongue.
Just to kind of emphasize your point as well, he was actually 31 when he had that surgery. So imagine, a pitcher, you get this injury. Not only does, like you said, at the time it meant the end of your career, you're also 31. So the prospect of having this type of surgery on your arm, missing a whole season, which he did, and then trying to come back in your mid 30s. I mean, my goodness. I mean, even today, it sounds like an absolutely massive, well, actually, not as much today, because I think we've all become so accustomed to the injury and players getting the surgery that we almost kind of take it for granted, how significant of an issue it is. But it's a pretty significant issue. Some fun stats in addition to this on Tommy John. So he ended up pitching a total of technically 25 full seasons, because he missed the season due to injury, but he pitched 25 seasons for 6 different teams, actually had 2 different stints with the Yankees, 4-time All-Star, including 3 times in a row, 78 to 80. So that's 3 years after the surgery. He comes back and he makes 3 straight All-Star games, finished his career with a 288 and 231 record, so didn't quite get the 300 win mark, but got pretty dang close. 3.34 ERA and 2,245 strikeouts. So, hey, again, for that type of legacy, your legacy, his legacy, I feel like, is mostly tied to the surgery, but people really need to remember the player that performed after the surgery, which is a pretty darn good baseball player.
Yeah, to me, he belongs in Cooperstown. He's one of those guys that's not there yet. His numbers on their own are impressive. A 3.34 ERA over 25 seasons. That is incredible to have that consistent. It only takes 1 or 2 really rotten years to absolutely destroy an ERA. So to have that over the longevity, and then of course just the significance to the game of being the player to help pioneer there are high school pitchers who have this procedure now to make sure that they protect their arm as much as they can. And okay, guys weren't throwing it as hard in the 70s as they are now, but to still 14 years after the procedure and to make the All-Star game 3 times after that procedure, to me, he absolutely deserves to be in Cooperstown.
Right. And also to not have any repercussions either. One of the things about, Tommy John surgery is a lot of guys end up with further injuries, later on down the line. And it could be, 3 years, 5 years. Some guys, it takes a couple of years just to get back. Felix Bautista of the Orioles, he had the surgery a couple of years ago. He has gotten like half a season since 2023. So, I mean, there's just, there's so many different things that can go wrong. So the 14 years, that's still just absolutely mind blowing. It's actually funny when this was announced, because my first thought was, I didn't know that Tommy John was still alive. But what I realized reading up on the story, because I remembered hearing something about a passing, and it was actually, I remembered 12 years ago, the surgeon who performed the surgery passed away. So that's what triggered in my brain. I was like, wait, haven't we heard this before? No, it was the surgeon who first performed it successfully on Tommy John, was the one who passed away about 12 years ago. And then, obviously Tommy John. So, by the way, condolences to his family. And, again, congratulations to him on, pioneering this surgery, and something that is used very commonly to this day. That's all I got.
Yeah. Very condolences to the family. He will always be remembered. It's one of those strange things where it's okay, he's remembered for his surgery, but if he didn't have that career post surgery, it would just be another one of those, well, they tried and it didn't work. So he will always be remembered and always have a special place in baseball fans.
Absolutely. So now we're going to move on to, well, the very annoying business side of sports and baseball, but it's always a topic of conversation. So back in May, just a little bit of a backtrack, back in May, the preliminary plans were announced for the San Diego Padres to be sold to a investor group led by private equity billionaire Jose Feliciano and his wife Kwanzaa Jones. So that was announced in May. Just earlier today, I believe it was, the MLB approved the sale unanimously. The team owners did. So once all of the financials are worked out and the official closing of the transaction happens, which they say is going to happen in the coming weeks, the Padres will have a new owner. Now, the timing is a bit awkward as the MLB seems to be trending towards a 2027 lockout. So you got to wonder about the timing maybe by this equity group, but this is not the first private equity transaction of a team that has happened in recent years. In fact, they all basically recently have been private equity billionaires buying up these teams. What are your thoughts here, Adam? I think Padres fans, I know, have kind of been clamoring for new ownership for quite some time. In fact, Freddie B and I discussed it back when the deal was first announced. What are your thoughts on all of these, like the recent sales and all these private equity guys, kind of basically taking over the ownership?
Yeah, I mean, we'll start with a macro on the Padres and then kind of expand it out a little bit. The first thought I have at the Padres is, well, their ownership previously had all of a sudden gone on a very unexpected spending spree over the last 3-4 years post-pandemic. And that can be one of those, they might be getting ready to sell kind of moves where we're going to sign all these big ticket players. Yes, they're going to be expensive. It's going to be somebody else's problem. I don't care. So, So that was one kind of maybe we should have seen more of this coming. Maybe we should have expected this a little bit sooner. As we're seeing some of these contracts that the Padres got to a point where they were actually paying out to the lesser revenue generating teams into MLB, if I can use the NCAA term for a moment. We were actually seeing them pay out to the teams rather than getting to receive extra benefits. That's how much spending they had been doing. As for the private equity side of it, the price tag, I mean, right there, you're just shy of $4 billion. There's only so many people on earth that can afford a price tag like that. Especially if you're not going to be chopping it up into 50, 100 little itty bitty pieces where all these people have a chunk, where baseball would prefer to have one or maybe two people being the voice for the team. There's only so many people you can go to in this instance. Jeff Bezos' name has come up multiple times in the NFL, and it's, because he's one of those people. His name will come up in MLB. Another thought that I had on this, though, and I was kind of chuckling to myself a little bit with it. We know that the Dodgers are going to be sold here in the near future, that Mark Walter is going to be selling them at some point. Does this sale affect the price tag on the Dodgers in any way, shape, form, or fashion? Does the fact that the Padres are worth just under $4 billion make the price go up on the Dodgers in the slightest, or is that just a totally other stratosphere?
I think the price on the Dodgers was already going to be in another stratosphere. I mean, you talk about, not only obviously, you talk about the history of the team, you talk about the name, you talk about the brand, you talk about the popularity, especially, with Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto in Japan. That price tag was already going to be astronomically high. I don't know if the Padres sale would necessarily impact that. Now, if a team like the Yankees or the Red Sox were to sell at a certain price, I think that's a number that they would pay attention to. But I think the sale of the Dodgers would have eclipsed this by a mile, regardless of if they had regardless if the sale had happened. But you do bring up a good point about the contracts and everything, and you got to wonder, when new ownership takes over, there's always the question of how are they going to approach the financials of the team, because these are businessmen after all. Are they going to treat it like a business where they're like, okay, revenue's coming in, we have costs going out, we need to maximize profits? It's the approach that every baseball fan hates, because it usually involves, trimming payroll. Not that they might have an option to do that in the near future, depending on how the CBA negotiations go. Or are they going to treat it like not necessarily like an investment or necessarily an asset, but this is like kind of giving back? Like, okay, I don't need to make a ton of money from this. I'm going to get great publicity. I'm going to be able to advertise the crap out of my business everywhere. I don't mind treating this as not necessarily running it at a loss, but running it at cost, which then, leads to more spending. And, you look at a couple of recent examples. Obviously, the most popular example people go to of how that's not how new ownership doesn't take the best approach is the Marlins back in the early 2010s, when the ownership group that was headlined by Derek Jeter — I don't think Derek Jeter led it, but it was headlined by it — within the first 2 years, sold off half the team, including Giancarlo Stanton, infamously, because then they decided to trim payroll all the way down, and now they've become the butt of the many jokes of the rich owners that don't spend money. Consequently, you look at a team like the Orioles, who just recently got new ownership, and new ownership has spent some money. They went on, they got Pete Alonso, they've signed guys to extension, guys like Sam Basayo, Kyle Bradish, and etc. They're actually spending some money. Of course, people always want them to spend more, but people are always going to want their ownership to spend more. So I do wonder, are they going to take the business approach, which might be interesting given, like you said, the Padres contract situation, or are they going to take the more baseball fan-friendly, I'll call it, approach, where they do spend money and they do, take not necessarily care as much about the plus and minuses?
Yeah, it's the fans. All the fans want Steve Cohen to own their baseball teams, because Steve Cohen runs it like it's a hobby, where price is not going to be an object. If I want that player, then by golly, come heck or high water, that guy's going to be on my team. I'm not going to let the dollars stop me. Of course, what the GMs and the other owners would point to and say, well, yeah, but the Mets have been terrible ever since Steve Cohen has taken over. They don't win anything. So I think in the perfect world, you want you want a healthy balance of both. These people, these owners, they're not how they're making money. You know, nobody is owning a baseball team and having it being their primary source of revenue. That's not how they're making their money. You want this to be a hobby. You want this to be we're going to have some fun. We're going to throw some money at it. We're going to try to win some baseball games. And, you know, if that means we wind up spending millions of dollars, well, I'm worth billions of dollars. You know, that's how you want it to be. But at the same time, fans also don't want their teams to just throw good money after bad to go chasing things either. So it will be interesting, especially as you pointed out with the lockout coming up. That's the players union is going to look at this and say, look, there's fresh money in here. The Padres can and should spend that money. They shouldn't just sit there and hold it.
Yeah, no, absolutely 100%. So we'll see how that plays out. And, you know, like I said, still very strange timing. Mr. Feliciano and Miss Jones may find themselves kind of sitting by the sidelines, patiently waiting for the first few months of their ownership of the team here. But hey, I mean, good on them for buying a competitive team. I mean, the Padres doing pretty well. We'll get to the week in review, and they're going to show up in our playoff race check-in here in a couple segments. First, right before we get to the week in review, this is appropriate to segue to the week in review. We had quite a debut this past weekend on Saturday, specifically for Joshua Baez. Now, Baez, and I wanted to talk to Freddie B about this because he has actually been on Baez, talking about him most of the season, because Baez had actually hit 34 home runs in the minors prior to being called up. But he gets called up, and my goodness, home runs in his first 3 at-bats against the Cubs. This past weekend for the St. Louis Cardinals, en route to helping them to an 8-4 victory. By the way, fun fact, I forget what the site is, but there was a site where if you had placed a $10 bet on Joshua Baez to hit a home run in each of his first 3 plate appearances in the majors, you would have had a $7 trillion payout.
Oh my heavens. Oh my heavens. You can wager on anything. You can wager on anything.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Which, by the way, as the internet has so adequately pointed out, that sportsbook would not have paid you the $7 trillion.
No,
that would have been a very interesting situation. But yeah, Adam, you as a Cubs fan got to experience this firsthand, so it might be a little bit rough to ask you your thoughts on it, but as unbiased as you can muster, sir, what were your thoughts on this debut?
Yeah, and I had a coworker who was at the game too. It was what a debut, what a special debut for Joshua Baez. That when you get to have when Cooperstown gets to come calling to you after your first game saying, we want something from you, you were part of something really special, really unique. Good on him. I'm very happy for him. I just wish it would have happened against literally any other team. But, the first one, especially in the top of the first, that was not a cheap home run by any means. I don't have the exact distance in front of me, but it was straightaway center, and it was a good 2/3 of the way up the bleachers in dead center field. He absolutely tattooed that first one. The funniest one, though, to me was the third one, not for Baez hitting, which after the first one he gave. He was very appropriate with it. He was not inappropriate, and by any means, I'm not trying to insinuate that. He gave a pretty nice little, not a bat flip, but he stared it down and he gave a good smile after that first one. He knew he had gotten all of it before he started in celebrating with his teammates. The third one, though, was the funniest, the one to right field, not necessarily for anything Baez did, but the Cubs starter was still on the hill. And when you're watching highlight reels, if you don't do this, when you know, especially, oh, this is going to be a home run, watch the pitcher. They are so entertaining. On the first two, the Cubs pitcher, all right, okay. Oh, yeah, he got that. Ooh, I'm in trouble. The third one, no look, no acknowledgement, just started walking, and you could see his body language just be, this punk got me again. So congratulations to Baez. That is an incredible accomplishment, and good on the Wrigley crowd for acknowledging it too. You know, it's hard when you're on the road and you do something historic like that, because, you know, the crowd, they're not going to be for you necessarily. Good. Now, there were a lot of Cardinals fans there. That's an easy trip up from St. Louis up to Chicago. So those matches are always well attended. But good on the Wrigley crowd for giving him a warm welcome into MLB. It's not every day you get to see something historic, even if it happens for the other team. Good on them for that. And congratulations to Baez. That was impressive. Good on him.
Yeah, that was impressive. By the way, 449 to center was that first home run. That thing was an absolute bomb. Now, for those of you who are thinking, oh, this kid's taking the league by storm, calm down. He's 0 for 11 since that third home run. So he is feeling the MLB growing pains as normal. So this is not the second coming of the next great guy. You know, he's in his adjustment phase, but to have the home run in the first 3 at bats, that is absolutely crazy to see. So like you said, good for him. And I hope he sticks. I hope he gets plenty of time to work out whatever the current woes are. And then, you know, continues to terrorize the Cubs for years to come with more Wrigley home runs.
Oh, that's a step too far, but okay. Life does come at you fast. Life does come at you fast in the MLB, though. I tell you what.
Absolutely. Go terrorize the Reds for a little bit.
There you go.
Go launch some home runs there. Yeah. Hey, and you'll be wearing red too. You can be the new Big Red Machine. I'm sure they'll love that. Stealing the nickname. So now, on that note, we're going to go ahead and jump into our week in review, where we take a look at the happenings of this past week. Which teams did really well, which teams did not do very well. And Adam, why don't you go ahead and kick us off here? What are some of the teams and or players, you could do players as well if you know have anybody off the top of your head, who had really good weeks and maybe some that were less impressive to you?
Well, you know, I'll stick with the teams by and large. I'll stick with the teams. The Dodgers. Now, this has been post trade deadline a lot. What is going wrong in Los Angeles? They struggle against the Brewers. We're going to talk about that series in particular more. And they've played 500 ball in their last 10. It's a very strange goings on with the Dodgers out west there. They've got the night off tonight. We'll see if it collects themselves a little bit.
Absolutely. Definitely strange. And by the way, in that 500 ball that you're discussing, that included a sweep of the Royals, which obviously the Royals kind of one of those teams floundering this year. So, you look at, post July 30th, where they completed a 2 of 3 series win over Seattle to get to 69-40. They're looking at, 5-11 in their past 16 games? You're right. That is definitely a cause for concern for the Dodgers. And again, remember that 5-11 includes a 3-game sweep of the Royals. So really 2-11 there. One team that has really stood out to me just for continuing to fight and work their way into a playoff spot is the San Diego Padres we were just talking about. This team has just been consistently good, solid, playing very good baseball, winners of 8 of their last 10. They haven't quite caught the Dodgers, but they are currently sharing the second wild card spot with the Phillies. And really the turnaround seems to have coincided with the turnaround of Manny Machado. Machado was greatly struggling earlier in the season, like batting average beginning with a 1, OPS beginning in the low 6s. he hasn't like lit the world on fire, but he's playing better. He's playing better baseball. Also, Fernando Tatis finally found his power. That was a big storyline for their first couple of months where he was not hitting a home run. Now he started to do that as well. So overall, yeah, the Padres really playing good baseball, a well-rounded baseball in recent weeks for the in the West.
Yeah, they swept the Brewers too. One of the top teams in the National League. To do that, they've put themselves in the conversation in the wild card. They've put themselves, all right, objects in rearview mirror, maybe closer than they appear to the Dodgers. I mean,
yeah,
there's probably not enough time, but they're in the conversation, and Machado, he's playing to the back of his baseball card. On the whole, he's going to have a below average season, but his numbers are starting to actually, oh yeah, that's the Manny Machado we're used to seeing.
Right. And and we kind of discussed this last week, and I think I actually discussed it about Manny Machado specifically. It's like, at this point in the season, players who had rough starts, like the numbers are going to be bad. Like unless you just absolutely like start crushing it, like have a whole month where you hit 500 with 1,000 OPS, like your numbers are going to be skewed down. So the fact that his numbers look average right now compared to where he started is a great sign. And then if I were to point out a team that's struggling, and you identified one, Adam, so I'll let you have that one. I don't want to steal from you, so I'll go a different direction. A team that I'm just going to continue to harp on until the end of the season, because I could have sworn that this team would have it together and make a push, is the Seattle Mariners. I know the Cal Raleigh fall off a cliff is something that needs to be studied by scientists everywhere. But the fact that, the rest of the team has just been, especially offensively, has just been so incredibly mediocre. Like, they're just not, they're last in the whole of the American League in runs scored. Dead last. It's just completely canceling their pitching, who has given up the fewest runs in the West, and it looks like the fourth fewest in the American League.
Yeah.
So the pitching's doing their job. The pitching's doing fine. It's not as elite, I think, as people thought. I think people thought this rotation would be absolutely crushing it. They're doing well, but they're not obviously not enough to overcome what has been a sorely mediocre offense.
Yeah. And then I'll go with one positive one here to wrap it up. They're a team that I know the last few years, they always wind up here. I shouldn't be surprised, but every year I always am. The Tampa Bay Rays are leading the American League East. Now, they didn't necessarily go through a murderer's row or anything like that here in August so far. They've been beating the Rockies. They've been beating the Mariners, who you just said are having a rough season. They were playing the Orioles, but they lost 3 in a row to the O's. They're still 7-3 in their last 10. They are still leading the American League the American League East by a comfortable margin on top of the Yankees. They're 16 games over 500. They are the lead. They are second in the AL East in runs scored. They are doing this with a payroll where it's, every year, oh, this guy's going to be expiring soon. Well, off he goes. Right. And they just continue to year in, year out, be right there at the top.
Yep, absolutely. So a couple things. First of all, love to take credit for that 3 in that 7-3. I'll happily take credit for that. Second, it was the funniest thing this past weekend because, like you mentioned, they lost those 3 games to the Orioles, but the Yankees also lost 3 games in a row around the same time. So while, yes, the Rays were losing, the Yankees were unable to take advantage of those losses. And we had a joke going, the O's Twitter had a joke going like, oh, the Yankees don't deserve our help. Because we're sure. We're throwing the biggest assists they could get right now, and they're blowing. And same with the Red Sox. Red Sox unable to capitalize as well. So with that, we're going to jump into our playoff race check-in. Now, last week we went division by division. This week we're going to hone in specifically on the wild card, which was perfect because Adam was messaging me earlier today going, wild card, wild card, wild card. No, he wasn't going that far, but he was excited to talk about the wild card, which was perfect because this was not planned for him to be on. So that's just serendipitous, the universe saying, Adam, go talk wild
Here
card.
we go.
So there you go. So we're going to start with actually, you know what, Adam? I'll let you pick. You can start with the National League or you can start with the American League.
Let's start with the American League, and then we'll work our way over. So we've got going into play as things are wrapping up. The Yankees, a comfortable 8.5 game lead at the very top. The Red Sox still hanging out there despite their recent struggles. They've come back down to earth in a hard way. They're 5.5 up, 3 games back of the Yankees. They've got the second spot. And now you have the Rangers and the Orioles tied for the final spot, and Toronto, Detroit, Minnesota, and Cleveland all within a game of this final spot. And then if Seattle can figure things out, it's not like they're totally irrelevant and out of this. They're only 2 games back. They've got to jump a million teams single-handedly, but they should not consider themselves out at this point. Who do you look at this in the American League and go, oh yeah, there you go. That's the team. Because I have one that stands out to me from the rest, but I'm curious if there's anybody to you that stands out.
Absolutely. And by the way, to round out the American League, let's, just a quick acknowledgement to the 3 teams that have no chance: Kansas City, Athletics, and the Angels. Thanks for playing. See you next year. Maybe you'll make a little comeback. Who knows? You ask a great question. It was funny. Actually, middle of the day yesterday, I was ready to include Seattle in the gone section because they've been played so inconsistently. You just heard me bash them a little bit. But of course, what happens between then and now? They win yesterday, and then the teams in the wild card spots lose, and now they're only 2 games back. So you cannot conceivably eliminate them. As you were talking, Adam, I think it became clear, and I think I might know who you're going with. And I'm going to throw my statement out there as well. Because there's one team that the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, yeah, this team stands out amongst this group. It's a team that has struggled mightily this year. It's a team that still has a load of issues, but it's a team that just recently had a lot of success. And that's the Toronto Blue Jays, to me. That's a team that was just in the World Series last year. The fact that they've played the way they're played and still within a half a game, they've won 7 of their last 10. It's really starting to become clear that of this group of, gosh, that's 7? Am I counting that right? 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. It's probably not going to be the best team on paper, which you could debate back and forth which of these teams is the best team on paper. It's going to be the team that gets hottest in the last 38 to 40 games. And I think Toronto is currently the hottest. Now, will they stay the hottest? Who knows? But, again, this is a team that just made the World Series. They still have a lot of the pieces from that World Series. They bought at the deadline. They did a little bit of both. So they kind of stood parallel, whereas some of these teams like Detroit obviously sold with the Skubal trade, although they got Jackson Jobe back, and he's been great since returning from injury. None of these teams exactly inspire confidence. They all have losing records. But that's the team that kind of, the more you were talking, the more that started to stand out to me.
Yeah, and Toronto, obviously, because they made the World Series last year, that's an instant. Well, yeah, the pedigree is there. I am a bit of a numbers guy. I like diving into the stats. I like looking at different numbers and different things. There's one stat though, and I know sometimes for certain baseball fans, analytics, it's too weird. How do they come up with this? What does this really mean? Well, this particular one is a really easy stat for determining if a team is good or not. And So there's one big outlying team to me out of all this group, and it is the Detroit Tigers. And here's the number that jumps out to me at them as they got swept by the White Sox over the weekend. They've been playing 500 ball. Of course, they sold off Scooble and the trade that made everybody mad in baseball. But they have a run differential of plus 83. That is not the run differential. That, for those that don't know, that is quite simply, run differential is how many runs have you scored versus how many runs have the other team scored against you. And if it's in the positive, generally that means you have a winning record. If it's in the negative, generally that means you have a losing record. And the further away from zero it gets, the better or worse you should be. With a run differential of plus 83, Detroit should be 20 games over 500 right now. Instead of, what are they right now? They're 60 and 64.
Yep.
The Tigers have a way. Now, seemingly every team in the American League Central has had a way to do this over the last decade. But the Tigers have had a way of coming on late in seasons and making runs. The Tigers are the team right now that I'm very curious about. As you pointed out, you don't need a winning record to be in the playoffs right now in the American League. Right now, 61 and 64 is good enough to get you there. If one of two things is going to balance out. Either the Tigers' record is going to prove to be the real thing, or their run differential is going to prove to be the real thing. I wouldn't be shocked if they go on a little bit of a tear here and suddenly wind up kind of in a pole position, if you will, for that third spot.
Absolutely. And, they get a benefit kind of later in the season. I mean, they've got a stretch coming up that is a little rough. Once they get past Pittsburgh and Kansas City, which is a favorable group, don't get me wrong, they get Tampa and LA back to back. So that's pretty rough right there. But then following that, they've got a whole bunch of divisional games, which the division is not good overall. Even the White Sox leading it are only 7 games above 500. And then their final 2 series of the season are home against the Nationals and the Pirates. So those are 2 very favorable series to try to finish it out. So yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good one that could win it. But at this point, and it's such a strange question to ask, but you got to start asking the question, and you got to start thinking about it, making a guess. Does the third wild card team in the American League, a playoff team, do they make it with a losing record at this point? You got 36, 37 games left. Does one of these teams, does Detroit or Toronto, or I'll throw in the shameless plug because everybody knows I'm an Orioles fan, the Orioles, the Rangers, do one of them get above 500 to get that 6th spot, or does the 6th spot go to a team that's 500 or worse?
It's, how much are they going to play each other over this last 5 or so weeks of the regular season too? How much of it is it going to be spent where it's all right, they're playing other teams? You just went through Detroit's closing out schedule there. Does Baltimore have a bunch of series with Toronto to close out the season? Are they done with each other? Does Texas is the lone kind of outlier there because they're in the West, and everybody else in the West is either not worth talking about or leading the division there. So, so are they going to be facing each other? I think I don't think they're going to have a great record, but I think, like an 83 and 79, I could absolutely, that's a winning record, but it's not anything anybody's going to be celebrating and throwing parades about, but I think like an 83 and 79 or an 85 win total wouldn't shock me at all if that's what the third wild card finishes with.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, for one of these teams to go 83 and 79, let's take the Rangers and the Orioles, they'd have to go 22 and 15 the last 7 games. So they'd have to win a good number of those final series. So, I mean, you got to start looking. I think it's going to be among the worst. And by the way, I say in history, this is very new, of course, those of you who are older baseball fans. Um, Very new to have a 16 playoff. Heck, even a 5 team. Growing up, it was 4. So you never had, like, there were years you had to win 94, 95 games to make the playoffs in some years. So, the concept of, it wasn't that long. Was it a couple years ago, or was it last year? I think it was last year. Detroit made the wild card at 83 and 79. Am I recalling that correctly? We've got a couple of teams in the 83, 84 win range get into the playoffs in recent years. So it's not completely out. Okay, I completely missed that by a mile. Actually, it was Cincinnati. I was right record, wrong team. Cincinnati made it last year at 83 and 79. So it's not foreign in recent years for an 83, 84, 85 win team to make it in the 16 format. But this year it might be even lower. And it'll be really interesting to see because there will be a National League team probably in the mid 80s in wins that will not make it. And speaking of which, let's jump over to the National League.
Yes.
And take a look at the wild card standings there. So I'm going to go ahead. We're going to run down because there's a lot longer list of teams that I feel like I can confidently say, no, you don't have a chance. Rockies, Giants, Mets, easy, goodbye, sayonara, thanks for playing. The Nationals, 7 games back, losing records since the trade deadline. Knock them off. Cincinnati hasn't played consistent winning baseball since they had their kind of drop off. I can feel confident taking them off. And even Pittsburgh, I'll go ahead and include Pittsburgh. 6 games back. They'd be right in the thick of it in the American League, but 6 games back, a couple of divisional opponents ahead of them. I don't think they've got enough, especially with the drop off in Paul Skeens' performance to make a run there. So that leaves, you've got the Cubs leading it. There you go, Adam. 5.5 games above the first team out. You've got the Phillies are half a game, and they are currently, they did get the win tonight. I don't know if that's registered yet in the standings. Wait, I'm just going to hit a quick refresh. Let's see. Okay, maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. I can't quite tell. But they're in the second spot, half a game above the Padres, who are at 67 and 59. They did lose earlier, so that has registered. And then half a game out, you've got the Arizona Diamondbacks. You've got the Miami Marlins 2.5 games back, and the Cardinals 3 games back. So, Adam, I guess the big question is, I mean, you've got this really tight 3-team race for 2 spots right now, plus 2 others right behind. Do you agree that it's just those groups at this point, or do you feel confident to eliminate the rest?
Oh yeah. The Pirates, yes, they're 6 games back. They're 60 games back. They are done. Mm-hmm. Stick a fork in them. They had a little bit of a run there, but yeah, I would say Pirates on back in the National League. Those teams are done. They don't have enough juice. They don't have enough horses in the stable still at this point to come up there and make a run. No, it's St. Louis on up in the wild card standings at this point. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Now, of this race up here, what are your thoughts on how this is going to play out? I think the Cubs are decently assured at this point. They'll get some type of spot. But man, this is a really interesting race between some very good teams. Although, to your comment about the run differential statistic, 3 teams or a group of teams that don't exactly light it up in that category.
Yes, they are a conundrum, and that is part of the fun in this group. Looking at it, I cannot figure these guys out for the life of me. The Diamondbacks will be hot, then they cool off. The Cardinals will have a rough week, then they come into Wrigley and take 2 out of 3. The Phillies will play very mediocre baseball, but they'll still hang out there in that second wild card spot. They will lose all chance of getting the top spot, but they'll still hold on to that second one. This is a batch that I think in the National, in the American League, the third wild card is definitely going to come down to that final week, but it's going to be which team is going to basically like hang on and, okay, so I guess somebody has to win this in the American League. In the National League, it's going to be, man, who's going to lose? Who's going to run out of gas, because there's just not room for all these teams to get in there. Had you asked me a week ago, I'd have said, oh yeah, the Padres they got off to too rough of a start. I just don't think they can overcome this. Now that's how I'm feeling about the Diamondbacks. I will say the Marlins are the one team in this cluster here. The Marlins would be the one team I would look at and say they're probably out. They've got to have a really good solid 2 weeks where, all right, if they play 13 games, they got to win 10 of them. To me, they've got to show me a little bit of a spark because otherwise what I'm afraid is going to happen is Miami's going to be the next one to just kind of fall off the table, if you will, that they're going to go 5-10 in their next 15, and they're going to be out of it at that point. But the other ones, I can't make sense of them.
Absolutely. And by the way, you bring up Miami, absolutely brutal closing schedule. They need to talk to the schedule maker, because whoever came up with this must have some vendetta. Their last 5 series, so this is September 11th through September 27th, Dodgers, Diamondbacks, Padres, Cubs, Braves.
Oh, I tell you what,
they're missing the only one they're missing is the Brewers. That's the only one they're missing in that stretch.
But I tell you what, if the Marlins make it, they will earn that playoff spot. I tell you what, there will be no doubt about it that they will have earned their spot.
Absolutely. And by the way, fun fact, last note on the run differential, and then we'll take our break here. So the Cubs sitting atop the wild card, plus 100 run differential, exactly to the points, of course, pending results of tonight's game. The rest of the teams that we discussed that are in that little lump combined, I'm redoing my math here really quick, plus 56.
Yep.
Which, by the way, that combination is less than the Detroit Tigers that you brought up earlier.
Right. Exactly. That's why this group in the National League is going to be so entertaining and so much fun, because they're good baseball teams, but none of them are great. They all are flawed, and they're going to be just really good enough to make some runs, and it's going to be fascinating to see who comes out of it.
Absolutely. So we're going to go ahead and take our break. When we come back, we're going to jump into our matchups for the week ahead. We're going to go down on the farm very briefly, and then we, of course, have our Yordan Alvarez Triple Crown watch, and then we'll end it with Around the Diamond. So do not go away. You're listening to the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the iSports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop, including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back to the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We are into the second half of our show, which means it's time for another current score update as we check in on how everything's going. We had a couple of more finals hit. The Mets and Padres. The Mets hold on this one 2-1. The second half of the Reds-Cardinals doubleheader finished up with the Reds winning this one 6-5, so they'll split that doubleheader. The Phillies beat the Marlins 6-5 in a close one there. And then for the live games, we've got Detroit still leading Pittsburgh 8-5, though. Pittsburgh closing the gap a bit there. The Red Sox, that's just not fair, beating up on the Diamondbacks 11-1. In fact, I think that game is just going final now as we speak. So that one will be in the books. Royals beating the Athletics still 7-4. That one in the top of the eighth. The Twins are still beating the Braves 4-2. That one in the middle of the fifth. The Cubs have claimed the lead over the White Sox 4-3. That one in the top of the seventh. And the Dodgers are expectedly beating up on the Rockies 5-1. That one at the end of the fourth. So now we're going to look to the week ahead and highlight some of the matchups we are looking at. I think the one that's going on right now that really has me intrigued is the Diamondbacks and Red Sox. Despite the score tonight, that's a really good matchup we have here during the week. And then for the weekend, looking at our Friday lineup, Atlanta, Milwaukee. Great series there to the two of the division leaders in the National League. And then, again, just taking a quick glance, I probably should have done this before I started talking. That's really the main one that stands out to me. I don't know, Adam, you jump in here. What are some of the series that you're looking at as good ones up and coming here?
Marlins Phillies is an incredibly important one. This is, we just talked about if the Marlins have to stay alive in this race, the Phillies are one of the teams they're going to have to beat. The Phillies, you want to show that, you want to hold on to one of those playoff spots. These are the kind of teams you're going to be seeing in October. So Phillies Marlins is a really strong one to me for the week. For the weekend upcoming, as I went backwards, sorry. For the weekend upcoming, you had mentioned Braves Brewers. That's the one. That is the one right there. Two of the leaders in the National League. Would we say now that the Brewers are the road through the National League is going through Milwaukee after what they did to Los Angeles, or is that premature?
I think the road's could go through Milwaukee. I don't think that's rude. Now, will that matter for a team like the Braves or the Dodgers? Maybe not. They might not care. Like, okay, we have to go to Milwaukee. All right, cool. The really good teams that are not as dependent on home away as, others. And looking at, Milwaukee has an incredible home record, but the Dodgers are 37-25 in away games.
Right.
So, they don't seem, in fact, their record is virtually identical home and away. So they don't really seem to care. Braves have a little bit more of an extreme split. Some other teams, the Cubs don't seem to care. Almost equal record. The Phillies don't seem to care. They actually have a decently better away record than home record. So I don't think it's crazy to say that the road could go through Milwaukee. I'm just not sure that it's going to be amazingly impactful, is the way I'll put it.
Yeah. Two other series for the weekend to keep an eye on, both in the American League, both involving the American League East. Divisional matchups. The Blue Jays are in the Bronx, and Tampa Bay goes up to Baltimore. Those are going to be very competitive, very we're gonna some of the wheat is gonna separate from the chaff a little bit there on those series. We'll get a little bit clearer of a picture of the wild card round after this weekend.
Indeed, and it's really interesting stretch for the Orioles here. They had 4 against the Rays. They got 3 against the Yankees midweek, and then 3 against the Rays. So really interesting 10-game stretch for them, which thankfully they started off winning 3 of 4. Although I think if entering that 10-game stretch, I think if you had said the team would go 500, I think most fans would have been ecstatic. I think if you told them now that they're going to go 500, I think everybody would be very disappointed going 2 and 4 in the next 6 games. So that's our upcoming series to watch. Now we're going to jump down to the farm, where we're going to take a look at some minor league news, and I'm going to keep mine local and, classic homer pick. Really interesting move. The Orioles organization advanced outfielder Vance Honeycutt, 2024 first-round pick for the team, who had been struggling mightily, particularly with strikeouts, but they decided to advance him from high A to double A Chesapeake, which is very awkward to say Chesapeake still, Adam. I don't know if you've heard this story, but the Chesapeake Bay Sox, the Orioles minor league affiliate, was formerly known as the Bowie Bay Sox in Bowie, Maryland, which is actually the town that I grew up in. Bowie. Well, technically, I grew up in the town right next door called Mitchellville, but I spent a lot of time in Bowie. I pretty much lived right across the street from Bowie, and for the entire time I was alive, growing up, it was the Bowie Bay Sox. So I could tell you exactly where the stadium is. I've got it, memorized, pictured. I could give you the GPS coordinates probably if I tried hard enough. But then just recently they changed it to the Chesapeake Bay Sox, and I'm still mad about it. Because it's like, no, you are the Bowie. They're not even on the bay. Like, if it was on the bay, okay, you're like half an hour from the bay in Bowie, Maryland. Like, you're not on the bay. So calling it just feels disingenuous. But in any case, back to the point. Rant over. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. They advanced Vance Honeycutt, and he's still struggling. And there's a couple of theories as to why they did this. One theory, and I think this is probably the more logical theory, is that after, trade deadline and, advances and all that and injuries, the Chesapeake Bay Sox only had 2 outfielders on the roster. They had been using utility infielders to kind of fill in the gaps. So part of it, most people think, and I think this is very logical, is they just needed a body to be there. And Honeycutt's actually a really good defensive outfielder. So, he's got that going for it. But the other logic is that they're thinking, okay, let's try a change of scenery. This is a guy who, by the way, in spring training got a couple of looks with the big league team in some exhibitions and hit a bunch of home runs in spring training. So they're like, okay, he struggled in the low levels. Let's kick him up to double A. See if that change maybe gives him a little stroke of confidence. Maybe he can find a rhythm going against that level of pitching. Possibly, I could see it. This is a guy, like I said, he was a first-round pick. He was also ACC Player of the Year twice in his time at North Carolina, and made a big impact for the Tar Heels in the 2024 College World Series. So it's interesting that he's struggled so mightily in his young pro career, given a very successful collegiate career. So we'll see if this, to quote Dodgeball, it's a bold move, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off.
Right.
With Vance Honeycutt.
Well, I'll go with my my local minor league team as well, the South Bend Cubs of the Midwest League. They're the high A affiliate of the Chicago Cubs. We actually took my family to go to a game here, not 3 days ago, but the Friday before that. It's our typical annual summer. We go and catch at least one game when we can, and always have a good time. Always enjoy going to it. If you are close enough to a minor league team, go. It is
Oh,
always
absolutely.
worth it. I have been able to go to a ton of games in South Bend. They're a very close drive for me from where I am in Southwest Michigan, and I work 10 minutes from the stadium.
Mhm.
So it's a very, very easy drive to get to them. But I've gotten to go to AAA games. I've gotten to go to other A-ball type games. They're always fun. They're always a good time. So I want to shout out the South Bend Cubs a little bit. They have already clinched a playoff spot in the Midwest League. They won their division in the first half. So they are automatically into the playoffs. So the fact that they're currently in fourth in the Western Division doesn't really mean anything. They will still be there. They've had a couple of players come up to them recently. Pitchers Noah Edders and Anwar Garcia both came
Mhm.
up from Myrtle Beach, and then they had Jackson Brockett move up from high A up to double A up to the Knoxville Smokies. So some movement there with those guys. So congratulations to Brockett. I was excited to get to see Big Mac's kid, and then unfortunately he got traded. So it's, oh, well, never mind. Okay, good luck to you. Good luck to you, kid. But he had been doing tremendously well. Mason McGuire had been doing some wonderful things for the South Bend Cubs this season. So I hope now out there in the Angels farm system that he continues to just have good success. I know sometimes when you get bounced around to a new team, it can be a change of scenery isn't always a good thing. So I hope nothing for the best for Mason McGuire. He had himself an excellent season with the Cubs. And I know that was a player they were not keen on moving, but you know, when you got to do things, you got to do things. So.
Right. Yeah, no, 100%. And you make a great point, getting out to see games. I live not too terribly far from the Durham Bulls. Yes, those Durham Bulls. Everybody knows the team. I try to get to probably a game a year, just because the stadium location in Durham is a little awkward to get into and out of. It's actually like kind of tucked in the city. It's like, okay, guys, we got this little square footage. Let's shove a minor league team in here. But I also try to get out there because they're in the same league as the Norfolk Tides, who are the Orioles AAA affiliate. So I try to get there just so to watch guys who I might get to see in Baltimore someday. But yes, going to a minor league game is always fun. I grew up, obviously, I went to the Bowie Bay Sox often. I actually got to see, here's a name for you. I wonder if you'll know it. Melvin Mora.
Okay.
If you know that name, he was an Oriole for many years. I think he bounced around the league a little bit in his career as well. I got to watch him play for the Bowie Bay Sox, and I didn't get to see him play, but I do know a couple people that had some posters of Manny Machado in a Bowie Bay Sox jersey before. Gosh, for him, it would have been maybe 2011 or 2012 when he was there. He was obviously not there very long because he made it to the big league as a 20-year-old. So he did not stay in Bowie very long. But there are posters out there, or like maybe promotional calendars or something like that has Manny Machado in a Bowie Bay Sox. A very young-looking Manny Machado, of course. So that's our Down on the Farm look. Now, of course, to our second week of the Yordan Alvarez Triple Crown watch. So Adam, I will kick it to you because I know you were brushing up on the stats here. Let's see I'll let you go ahead and tell us where Yordan is in the grand scheme of his Triple Crown pursuit.
All right. So at the moment, he would be the winner in one of the three categories. He is still relevant in all three. He is in the top 5 in all three categories, but he is leading in one. Would you like to wager a guess as to what the one is?
Well, he was doing really well in it last week, and I know he kept hitting very well. I know he's kind of stumbled a little bit in the home runs, and he was behind in RBI when we talked last week. So it's got to be batting average if it's one of the three. That's what I got.
Yes, he has a 6-point edge on the hitter at number 2, which, as I'm getting the name pulled up, I only have his last name. Luis Arias is currently in number 2.
Makes sense.
Alvarez is 6 points in front of Arias, hitting 321 right now, average. First of all, I love that the top 5 hitters all have an average above 300. I'm not an old person, but I'm an old soul, and seeing batting averages above 300 just does my heart good.
Yes.
In home runs, Alvarez is tied for second. He is 1 behind Kyle Schwarber with 36 home runs. So he is by no means out of the running at all. In fact, it's only 3 home runs that separate first from fifth in that list. Kyle Schwarber still on the pace with 37. And then RBI, Alvarez is a little behind, but still he's 1 good week, not even from being right there. He is tied for 4th with Jordan Walker of the Cardinals, and currently it is Alec Burleson, also of the Cardinals, who is your leader with 92 RBI. Alvarez sitting with 88, so not by no means off the pace.
Yeah, and he's got a really good chance of passing. I believe CJ Abrams should still be high up on that list. However, Abrams has taken a big hit in his RBI production as James Wood has gotten hurt and missed some time. So a lot of, in fact, probably over a good majority of Abrams' RBI production has been James Wood, who might even actually, I'm curious, I'm going to look at this really quick because he had such a massive lead in runs scored. It would not surprise me if he's still, despite having missed the last like 10 or 12 games, still leads the league, and by a good margin in runs scored is James Wood. He has 100. The next closest is Matt Olson at 88. And right behind him is Pete Crow Armstrong at 87. But again, that's 100 runs that were scored in front of CJ Abrams. And, Woods does have 30 home runs. So he drove himself in 30 of those times. But that was still 70 opportunities for CJ Abrams.
Right.
So, I think Alvarez has a pretty good shot of passing him. Now, I don't know what the heck is apparently going on with the Cardinals offense here, but apparently they're really good at scoring runs. So those Cardinals boys might be a great hindrance. And I didn't expect him to hold on home runs, at least league wide. Now in the American League, I think last check he's still leading in all 3 RBI and batting average by a good margin. But home runs was always the cloudy one for me because I figured, a guy like Junior Caminero who gets on hot streaks and Kyle Schwarber who gets paid to hit bombs, guys like those would be his big hindrance. And now Matt Olson, I believe, is one who has kind of hammered his way into the fray as well.
Yeah, Caminero is only 1 behind Alvarez right now. He's gotten up to 35. Yeah, it's funny you brought up all the runs scored there. That is the one massive drawback to the RBI statistic, is it is so fundamentally reliant upon people getting on base in front of you, and you just have no control over that.
Absolutely. And it's why a guy like Abrams, who the Nationals have been batting 4th, I think the 3rd or 4th. So not only does he have Woods, he also typically has 2 other guys who have varied over the course of the season. But without Woods, that number's going to drop. I feel like people don't talk about the runs a player scores as much anymore, but it feels like a pretty important statistic.
It's the name of it's the way you win the game. As unfortunately, you've got to get those. So yeah, they are incredibly important.
Yeah. By the way, I'm going to put you on the spot with a random quiz question before we go to Around the Diamond, since we're talking about stats, and you and I are both stat guys. There is a player who is leading the league in triples.
Okay.
And he has more than 2 times the next closest player in triples. He has 15. The next closest it's a 4-way tie with 7.
Oh my goodness.
Name that player.
Oh, I am.
It's a big name. It might not be the first name that comes to mind, but it's a big name, and I'll even narrow it down for you a little bit more. National League.
Okay, so the first thing that comes to mind is PCA, Pete Crow Armstrong, for the Cubs,
Oh, that
but
would
I
be
don't
too
think he's
easy
got.
if I gave you
Yeah,
that.
I know. I was gonna say he doesn't have 15 though. He's got a lot, but he doesn't have 15.
He's one of the 4 guys who are tied for second with 7.
That feels better. Yeah, that feels more right. Who is the speedster with 15?
It is Corbin Carroll of the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Okay. Sure. Oh yeah.
Yep.
He's a good. Yeah. He's another one of those guys that's a walking double just waiting to happen.
Oh yeah, dude. And he puts so much effort into those runs too. Like when he runs, like he's running fast, don't get me wrong, but he is putting his whole heart and soul into when he's running the base paths.
Those are the most fun guys to watch when it's, every time when they round first, oh, that helmet's coming off.
Yes.
That helmet is going to be at second base and he's going to be all the way at third.
Yes.
Those are the most fun guys to watch on the diamond.
Absolutely. He is one of those guys for sure. So now we're going to end it with our Around the Diamond segment where we talk about, basically anything that's really on our mind, anything that is really bugging us. Not bugging us or anything that's really piquing us. And I wanted to use my Around the Diamond to give a shout out this week to a guy. He got his big call up with the trade deadline for the Washington Nationals when they traded Luis Garcia. They needed a lefty bat to call up to platoon with other first baseman Andres Chaparro, who's your righty against lefty specialist. Abimelec Ortiz. Now, this was a guy who was getting a lot of positive attention in AAA. People were wondering when he was going to get the call, and he has not disappointed. And I'm going to do the quick math here. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 13 games since being called up, added to the team, pretty much right at the trade deadline. He is batting .300 with a 1.017 OPS, has hit 5 home runs, and generally brought a lot of pretty good excitement. And his production against right-handed pitchers combined with Chaparro's production versus lefties, it's been a true platoon. Basically, neither has faced the other-handedness. They've lined up almost exactly. The first base position for the Nationals since the trade deadline has been, and I've tried to remember the statistic, I think they're like 4th or 5th in baseball in production from the first base position. So shout out to Abimelec Ortiz, and also shout out to Andres Chaparro, who started the year awfully, but then had a ridiculous 4-hit, 2-home run game about a month ago, and now his OPS is over 800 on its own. So, the Nationals obviously struggling right now. We talked about them basically out of it. James Wood is hurt. The pitching is absolutely atrocious. But at least the offense continues to impress. And this first base duo might be a really fun duo to watch for the foreseeable future.
And I will use this time, too, to also make a shout out to Nico Horner, the second baseman for the Chicago Cubs. Over the weekend, he was selected, appointed, given the opportunity to have a sit-down meet and greet with fans before the game on Saturday against the Cardinals. He sat there and signed hundreds of autographs before going out for the game and was genuinely excited to be there. He did pictures with the fans. He did the autograph signing. He did a little bit of conversing back and forth, and he genuinely was happy to be there and interact. This was not a Marshawn Lynch, I'm just here so I don't get fined. This was not a absent-minded, I'm having to go play a game here in a little bit. He was there. He was with the fans. He had a wonderful time. You can understand why the Cubs have made him a cornerstone of their franchise going forward. He is somebody that Cubs fans will be very happy and proud to have playing 81 games at Wrigley every year for many years to come. Good on Nico Horner.
Great on Nico Horner. Absolutely amazing. And yeah, no, one of those guys that, he's not going to get the, illustriousness of a PCA, or like the notoriety of, if you were to go back to some of the guys that won the World Series, the Chris Bryants and the Anthony Rizzos of the world. But every franchise, every good franchise, I should emphasize, has those core guys. And he's definitely one of those core guys, both on and off the field for the Cubs. Like he's, excellent on the field, excellent off the field, especially. It sounds like that would be a guess of me if I had just heard that story. But now, of course, I've heard you say that, and now we confirm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He does a fairly frequent radio spot with the Cubs radio network, and he's very open. He's very open, very honest, very genuine in that he's willing to talk about the ups and downs. He's willing to talk about the baseball stuff. He's willing to talk about the personal stuff. He is excited to be a member of the community at large. He's one of those guys that, just like you said, every good team has one, because every World Series team needs six or seven of those guys where it's, yes, all right, he might not win the MVP, but boy, you'd know it when he's not there.
Yep. 100%. 100%. So that'll do it for tonight's show. Adam, thank you again for jumping in here and joining me. It was a blast talking baseball. Before we head out, go ahead and tell the fans where they can find you on social media and what other shows, if you want to do a shameless plug thing, while you've got the spot.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I know Freddie will be back soon, and the fans will much rather see Freddie than me, but I'm glad to be a pinch hitter on a moment's notice when we needed it. So you can follow me on Twitter. I am at Adam_Karnik. As you can see, the banners behind me, I am very much a Chicago fan. I've also got the Blackhawks one there too. As we get into football season, obviously I'll be doing a lot about the Bears as that goes on. I am very passionately a Bears fan to the detriment of my mental health, but that's where we're at. But then also coming up here in just a few weeks, Freddie B and I will be starting back up the Neutral Zone here on IE Sports Radio, where we will be talking all things hockey. We are, believe it or not, we are only about 5 weeks away from the puck dropping on the NHL season. The NHL regular season gets a very early start this year, September 29th. So Freddie and I will be starting up here in just a few weeks. We haven't nailed down the exact start date yet, but we should be Wednesday nights right around this time, 9:00 in the East, 6:00 out West, and talking all things hockey. You can follow us on Twitter there as well, as we'll be having a ton of fun this season.
Yep, and you guys just finished up the season not that long ago. So, hockey's just got that quick turnaround. It never ceases to amaze me. Like you get the Stanley Cup, then you get the draft is like right after the Stanley Cup, like a couple weeks, and then you get free agency, and then boom, it's here again.
Yeah, some years it's the Stanley Cup finishes and 3 days later it's the draft. I don't know how those GMs do that, but yeah, it is a short off season, but it is a ton of fun. We have a great time.
Well, the good news is that 30 of those 32 GMs don't care about the Stanley Cup. So, that's probably how they do it. That's your punishment. If you're winning the Stanley Cup, you get the least amount of time to research the draft project. Of course, we know in reality, those scouting departments are going 24/7, 365. So there's a whole group of guys dealing with that, but it's got to be fun being the GM. Like you're watching the Stanley Cup and they show up on draft night. All right, who we taking? So somebody tell me someone.
You still smell like champagne. Yeah, don't ask.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. Well, once again, thank you to everybody who tuned in. This has been Adam and Mike Patt for the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Have a great week. See you next time.
Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Let's drop the Monday night is rolling in. Let the baseball season begin. From the farm system down to the street. Single A, double A, feeling the heat. NCAA, softball and baseball, the diamond swing. Hear that Louisville slugger sing. Welcome to the Bullpen Bulletin, where the hardball magic is beginning. Mike, Patt, and Freddie B take the stand, the loudest baseball show in the land. Ice Sports Radio, heavy and real. That's just how we feel.